saw a question on the Home Recordists forum. It was one of the sort of home recording things where somebody was saying, should I record in 16-bit or 24-bit, and should I use WAV or AIFF and those sort of things. You know, what's an MP3? Why is it bad? Why is it better to have WAV? All that. And I thought, well, actually, the best way to answer this is to first of all describe what sound actually is, because it's all about concepts. Rather than necessarily the maths. I mean, I did electronic engineering at university alongside my music, and I must have lost consciousness in the lecture where they brought out all the maths. No matter, because the concepts is what is important. So I've got here a little key that you open your electric meter outside with to read the meter, and a piece of string. So this is, imagine that this is a swing in a play park. So when you first go in the park, the swing is just sat there. It might be blowing slightly in the wind. We'll cover that in a minute and what that might mean for our audio signal. Now, if I pull this, it'll go backwards and forwards. You know, that's fair enough. We all know what happens with a swing. You pull it backwards and it will carry on for a bit. But the amount of deviation, the amount that that swing travels, gets gradually less over time until eventually it'll come to a standstill. This is called simple harmonic motion. That's what it's called. Don't worry too much about the name, but I quite like the concept because it says simple. It's kind of the basics of it. Now, using this Sharpie pen and this piece of paper, I am going to essentially, let's say I'm recording or I'm observing how that swing, where that swing is over time. So if we've got this here, the swing going backwards and forwards, and this piece of paper does this as my recorder, let's say my tape recorder for example, we'd end up with this. So with my Sharpie, we've got something like this. So the swing starts there, and does something like this. I'll just clean it up a bit. There we go. Let's make it a little bit nicer to look at. So the swing started, and then we pulled it out and let it go back again, and then it got to the other side. It got to the other end of its swing and then came back. So for a very brief moment, the swing actually comes to rest before coming back. So the energy of the swing, you're giving it energy and then it's releasing it again, but the momentum of the swing is carrying it on a bit further. Now, the reality is that these deviations will actually become less and less. So if I grab another bit of paper, they start off big like that, and then it gradually gets smaller and smaller and smaller until the swing stops. There we go. Now, this is kind of what happens when you pluck a string on a guitar or you play a note on the piano. So the swing, moving backwards and forwards like that, is exactly the same as an audio, as a sound wave. Audio, not quite. Audio is what happens when we, when we store it on a format. Sound is this. Sound is actually the disturbance of air. It disturbs it one way, then disturbs it the other. And that's why you get this wave like this. So that means that in the middle of this wave, like this, that is where the stationary point is of the swing. So we go up and then it comes back down through the line and etc. all the way. So time is going along like this. That's your time there. As time progresses, is going that way. And this is called amplitude, which you can think of as volume. So you have a maximum deviation. Now, if you try and pull the swing too far, we all know what happens. The swing sort of jiggles about on the chain a bit and sort of, it sort of wobbles about like that. Now, if, let's say, the swing is between two walls, for example, you've got the swing and it's a little play park and you've got two walls either side. The swing can't go further than one wall and then back across to the other one. It has to stay within those two walls. That is what is known in your audio circles is your headroom, the maximum level you can record without the swing looking like this. If we get distortion, the swing will hit that wall and then come back like that. But then the swing will gradually come to a standstill, but it's not hitting the wall anymore. Here it's hit that brick wall there. So there's our resting point in the middle. So there is this concept of maximum recording level, which you can imagine the two brick walls. You don't want your swing to hit the brick wall. So now what we've got here then are sort of three representations. We've got something where it's over recorded or distorted, we've got the perfect recording, and then we've got a recording that is kind of ideal, but it's not really going to happen like that, because also unless you've got a synthesizer where you hold the key down all day, most musical instruments are going to have this what's called an envelope. So the envelope is where you'd have a decreasing amplitude over time, like that. So this is the more realistic thing here. Now I'm going to do a little demonstration on the computer in a minute where I'm going to record a guitar note, and you can actually see all of this happening. Now, digital recording, how it works is you have got every so often, remember this is the time axis going down here, every so often it's going to take as what's called a sample. So at the beginning it's going to take a sample which is there, then it's going to take another sample, then it's going to take another sample, and every time it crosses the line of where the swing is, it's going to store where that is on your recording device, like so. Now the way it stores it as a number made up of lots of zeros and ones. It stores things as binary data, and it will store either a 16-digit number or a 24-digit number. And this is what your bit depth is, not bit rate. That's different. Bit depth is where you have a recording which you've got a certain number of numbers that you can use to represent that wave, so that when you play it back you get a nice curve, and lo and behold you get back the sound wave that you put in. The fewer bits you have, so if you have an 8-bit sample of 8-bit bit depth, you won't be able to capture so many numbers. It'll put it between two numbers. If you go into things like some of the synths on Logic, you can, it's called bit crusher, where it actually reduces the number of bits and it doesn't sound very nice. So the other thing that we have is sample rate, which is how many samples it takes over a given time, usually measured in kilohertz, a number of thousands of times every second. The CD quality file records 44,100 samples per second. And of course you can get higher rates than that. We're at 192,000 is the top at the moment. But why would you need to record that many? Well, the range of human hearing is said to be 20,000 hertz, 20 kilohertz. Now, in order to take if this was a 20 kilohertz wave, you'd need to take a reading at least twice per cycle in order to get that sine wave to come back out again. That's why sampling frequency has to be double the audio frequency that you are recording. Now, I record everything pretty much at 44,100 times per second. I don't do any high sample rates. It's partly there's some very clever circuitry that actually shapes those higher frequencies, called the sine x over x function, for those interested. Now, the concept of digital recording dates from the 30s, the concept of it, and that's what's important here. So the important bit is concepts, not necessarily all the maths about how it's achieved. We've got designers who are working on new things all the time, and that's fine, and we need these sort of people. But when you're using this stuff, if you're aware of the concepts involved, it makes a massive difference. Now, lots of people say, yeah, bang, gone are the bad old days of analog recording, where if you record something really quietly, you get lots of noise and tape hiss and all that sort of stuff. Well, the same thing can happen with a digital system if your bit depth isn't very good. Let's say you recorded something at 8-bit sampling. So you would end up with something where you get something called quantization noise at the bottom, where it can't decide what the volume level is because the points at which it's sampling are too far apart. So you get this sort of chattering. So it is actually really important still to use the maximum practicable level on your digital recording device. So there we go. There's the concept. There are two things to think about. There's the sampling frequency and then there's the bit depth. Now the maximum bit depth that we have at the moment is 24-bit. Oh, what does that mean? It's actually 24 binary numbers, 24 zeros or ones. Now the concept of binary is that let's say we've got 1011. Okay, this is a binary number and it represents 8 plus 4 plus 2, 8 plus 2 is 10. That is 11 in binary. That's fine. Now, 16-bit gives us 65,000 odd different recording levels. So it's quite good. But 24-bit gives you millions of different recording levels. And really the good bit about this is it only takes up an extra 50% of your hard disk space. So a 24-bit file at 44 kilohertz will give you, it's about 7.5 megabytes per minute of storage. Of course, you double that for stereo, and then, you know, if you've got a 32-track system, you're looking at 240 meg per minute, or a gigabyte for a 4-minute song. So it is quite memory intensive, but in this day and age of fast computers that are multi-capable, that have got great memories, amounts of memory, really it's kind of that, it's becoming a thing of the past, really. So now I'm going to go to the computer and I'm going to record a guitar note, and then I'm going to look back at the file and you'll pretty much see this. So here I am sat at the computer, and I'm going to record a note from my guitar, and then we can have a little look at it afterwards and you'll be able to see kind of that swing idea come to life. So I'm going to record a harmonic, basically that. And then you can see afterwards that it's actually quite a simple sound as well, rather than, there's quite a lot of sounds in there, but for now I'm going to demonstrate it with the harmonic. Here we go. Okay, that will do. Now, over time, that harmonic will get slightly quieter and quieter, a bit like the diagram just now, where the wave became smaller as the swing came to rest. So, next thing, I'm going to have a little look at that wave, and we'll kind of see what's going on with it. Okay, so now on my screen, on my version of Logic here, that's the note I just recorded. You can see a little thing at the beginning. If I just zoom in, you can see that there's that waveform there, like that. Now I'm going to go in and have a little bit of a closer look at this. Now, there's my wave. Now, ignoring the bit at the beginning, because that's like the attack of the sound, you can see how the sound gradually gets smaller in thickness as I go here. See this line here? That's where the swing was in its initial state, and then suddenly somebody's pushed the swing and it's done that. Albeit at a far greater rate. I played an A, which is 440 Hertz. Now, if I just go here somewhere and start to zoom in, lo and behold, there's a pretty perfect sine wave there. Don't know if that's clear on the camera here, but you can see that wave. So there it is in practical detail. And then when I go here, you can see it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I actually damped the string to stop the sound there. So if we look at this, you can see that I basically killed the wave off. There we go. So I've zoomed in on that ending bit. Like that. And then I basically stop the computer so that you'll return to silence. Now, what I'm going to do with the computer in this position, I'm going to re-record. I'm going to record something else, and you'll basically hear I'm going to play an open string now with a bit of a twang, like that, and you'll see that there are all sorts of other things going on with this. It's not just the sine wave anymore. You do get the same periodic thing, but other frequencies, like those top partials of that string, are going to be sine waves of their own. So you'll get much, much more detail. So if I just press go and then record, and I sort of naturally, I just gave it a bit of a helping hand, damping it there by just holding my finger on the string. Now let's look at this one, see what happens with this. Now this time, as you can see, everything is much more complicated. You can see this sort of periodic effect where we've got one there, and if we go along you can see that every so often you get this sort of little lull. This is the main note then, but you've got all of these other little sine waves that are adding to this. So suddenly the sound is much, much more complicated. You can still see that things are going round the centre line, but there's bits where it sort of goes underneath, and there's all sorts of things. This is like if you're sort of shaking the swing about when you're on it. If you've got a sort of errant child who doesn't want to be in the swing anymore, you can imagine them sort of jigging the swing about while it's still moving. So the main motion of the swing is sort of disturbed by the sort of the tantrum in place with the child that wants to get out the swing. So you can see that if I just bring this back, you can see still the same concept of this signal getting smaller like that. So it's important that my computer is able to do the sampling required to capture all of these top frequencies. Otherwise I'm going to get something really dull sounding that won't have all that top end clarity. Now you can also see, if I zoom in vertically, there we go, that's the sort of maximum zoom I've got, and I'm going to look around here. You can see that there are, this is sort of 2% of the maximum sort of deviation of this. Now it's slightly erroneous calling it a percentage, because actually the decibel scale is what we're interested in. 16-bit system's got a 96 decibel range, which isn't actually huge. It's pretty good, but it's not massive. 24-bit gives you something like 128 decibels, which is more like it. You know, you can record from the faintest whisper to the sort of, you know, jet engine at the end of a runway. You can kind of capture that. But as you can see, this computer has done pretty well. Now I'm recording 24-bit here, and you can see that this, the computer, I know the screen is a little bit sort of wavy, and it's sort of with the little sort of blue and yellow screens there, but you can, a little bit blue and yellow lines, but you can see the concept of this. Now if I over record something now I'm going to go back and record another guitar part. This time I'm going to turn I'll turn the monitors down so it's not so loud, but I'm going to turn the thing right up, the input right up, and give it a signal that is too loud. There we go. So here we go. Now Logic has given me a message. Recording file audio recording number 6.aif is probably clipped. I love the way it says probably. Yeah, it's the Carlsberg of computing. So if I just go back and have a look at this now, if I double click on that, there we go. The wave is, well, it's huge. It's just way too big. So if I just, I'll zoom in so that you can see the entire thing. Now if I go in depth into here, you can see that we've got the flat line at the bottom and at the top. Remember what I was saying about the brick wall with the swing going between those two? It's hit the walls. It's hit the maximum sort of deviation. Now if this was going to continue, it'd sort of come down here and back up. So this is a very, very over recorded signal, and you could hear that fuzziness. Now the reason for the fuzziness is that where this hits the wall, you get something called ringing, which it actually gives you a sort of high frequency content. Now this is going into quite complicated physics and maths, but that fuzziness is due to the fact that you've got this sort of ringing of the signal as it hits the end stops. And you can see that after a while, if I just come back here, somewhere like here, it's suddenly returned, because the signal is quieter, it's come within your walls. So if I go back to somewhere like here, that's clean, whereas when it was over here, it wasn't. Now this is the concept of guitar amp distortion as well, where valves basically accentuate. Remember what I was saying about the ringing. Harmonics. The harmonic series is a complicated one, because actually with a basic sound you can generate more harmonics if you overdrive that signal. Now that's what valves do. They accentuate even harmonics, which are in musical terms consonant. The transistors distort odd harmonics, which are dissonant, and that's why we prefer valve distortion to transistor distortion. So there's a little bit about digital recording and about the concept of sound.